Hey folks, Sean here, and today what I want to talk to you about is how to prevent your product company from getting stuck in what I refer to as the build loop. Now, when I say build loop, what I mean is at your product organization getting trapped in this routine where you are constantly building and shipping new features. And that's essentially all that you do. There are so many risks associated with following this pattern, and almost every product company falls into it. So I want to talk about in more detail why this is such a problem, what you can look out for to see whether or not you've ever been there, and if you are, what you can do to break that routine and save your product. Now, the reason why following this pattern is such a problem is because it pulls your product away from the market. Obviously, you're trying to achieve product market fit, but if you're just constantly building and shipping features that are not properly validated around what I refer to are problems worth solving, then what you're adding to your product is only going to make it worse. It's not going to address unmet needs that your customer has because you haven't done the research to identify what those are. And instead, you're just going to wind up shipping ideas. And those ideas can come from anywhere, but if they come from anywhere but your customer, it's not going to add the value for the people that matters. And as such, it's going to make your product experience worse. It's going to reduce the value to your customer. Like I said, it's going to pull you away from product market fit, and you'll be stuck in this loop, which will ultimately become a death spiral, not just for your product, but for your entire organization. It's sunk tremendous product organization efforts because people get stuck in this build loop because they aren't following the proper process. So I want to talk about how to break out of this cycle and routine to prevent it from becoming a death spiral, which can sink your product or your product organization, and then the process that you should be following instead. So there are a lot of symptoms you can look out for to recognize whether or not your product company is stuck in that build loop. If you are constantly shipping features, if your product roadmap is full of ideas and opinions, and you don't really see much of these changes that you're making to your product or your product experience having the desired effect for whatever it is your company is trying to achieve, ideally product market fit or scaling or improving customer satisfaction or whatever it is you're measuring, as long as you're measuring something that matters, if those metrics aren't moving and you are following the process that I just mentioned, then you are more than likely stuck in this build loop, as in you're constantly shipping features hoping that that will move the needle, or eventually you'll just kind of stumble upon the right direction. I can tell you for certainty that that doesn't work. I've fallen into this trap myself. That's one of the reasons how I know. But I've helped countless product organizations identify that they're stuck here and get out of it. So if you are experiencing any of those symptoms, right, an improperly validated roadmap, features that continuously get shipped but aren't being used, you should be tracking the analytics to see what usage looks like with your product. So if your customers or your users are not using your product consistently, that's a telltale sign. If even they are occasionally using it, when you do get a hold of them or you get any kind of interaction or feedback from them, if their reception is lukewarm, if you can't get them on the phone to talk about your product, if they don't have anything good to say when they do talk about it, or they're more kind of indifferent or kind of passive about what it is your product does, these are all signs that your product obviously doesn't have product market fit, but more than likely the leading cause of why you don't have product market fit is because you're stuck in a build loop. So now that you have an idea what that might look like, you can start to diagnose whether or not at your product organization you're in or around an area like that. And if you are, what you need to do is first figure out how to break that cycle, right? And you might need to do some convincing. But if you're in product like me, that should be what you're responsible for. So you should have access to the people that you need to make the compelling argument that we need to change our routine. We need to take a different approach. Now, one of the best ways to do that is to share some of that information that I just mentioned, right? Prove it through the results and the data. Make sure that your team and the powers that be understand that what you have been doing clearly isn't working. They understand that, they'll be open to talking about a different approach. You realize that the work that you've been doing hasn't been making your product better, but in fact actually making it worse. Now it should be time to talk about a new approach. And when that time comes, you need to be identifying what I refer to as the unmet need and performing discovery first before you build to better understand what I refer to are problems worth solving. If you perform that discovery and you better understand that context, you'll know what you can build into your product that will offer value to your customers and your users. And you don't build until you have uncovered that. So you need to invest in the discovery and the research to find those problems worth solving. Then and only then do you consider moving forward to the build stage. But here's another component as well. Even after you've done both of those things, you don't stop. You have to, after you've built, also evaluate whether or not the hypothesis was true, as in you identified a problem we're solving, you built functionality to solve it. Now we need to know whether or not that worked. So you need to evaluate what you have provided into your product to better understand whether or not the solution you just provided in fact solved the problem. And that's through additional discovery and research. And that's where this cycle continues. A healthy cycle where you're continuously identifying problems worth solving, identifying unmet needs, building those into the product, and then evaluating whether or not it worked. If you continue to follow a routine like this, it is inevitable that your product will get close to and eventually find product market fit. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you got value out of it. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so you can be notified when more content like this becomes available. And in the comments section, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been caught in the build loop? And if so, what did you do to get out of it?